This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. When I was at my lowest, Hailey stayed with me in a crumbling apartment hallway in Brooklyn, New York. Winters were freezing like an icebox, and we survived on 1 cup of instant oatmeal a day doing that for 3 whole years. Later, I finally turned my life around. I became the dark horse of the tech world, earning dollars by the bundle. But the good times didn't last. The moment I made my first $10 million, I dropped dead from overwork at my office in Silicon Valley, collapsing right there at my desk. Hailey took that inheritance dove into the ruthless business world and became the youngest female billionaire in California. The day she appeared on the cover of Forbes, I came back to life. Maybe I just couldn't let it go. Even after downing glass after glass of that bartender's forget-me cocktail at the ferry across the river Lethe, my past clung to me like a nightmare I couldn't shake. The bartender tried everything. By the 3,864th attempt, he was mixing tequila absinthe, even throwing in ashes for good measure. Still, every single time I blurted her name clean and clear. Hailey. Finally, the guy broke down and threw me a choice. How about this? Go back, clean up your own damn mess. I said yes on the spot. The next time I opened my eyes, I was standing in the grand hall of some luxury cocktail party in Manhattan. Handsome men in Armani suits, women in red bottom heels, champagne bubbles floating in crystal flutes. I was feeling smug. At least this time the gods gave me a decent rebirth script. Just when I was savoring the moment, a blonde guy snapped his fingers at me. Champagne. Now, I looked down. I was wearing a waiter's uniform, white gloves on my hands, holding a silver tray. In my head I cursed. Fuck, I'd come back as a cocktail waiter. This was supposed to be a good setup. Starting off at the bottom rung, how was I supposed to reconnect with Hailey, now the queen of Silicon Valley? Just as I was sulking carrying that tray toward him, I caught sight of someone standing across from the blonde guy. It was Hailey. She was wearing a black strapless gown draped in a man's suit jacket, casually entertaining the blonde dude's attention with a distracted expression. My eyes landed on the jacket over her shoulders, then drifted to the shirt that guy was wearing underneath. Jealousy twisted through me. Was she close with him? Intimate. I hated myself for thinking that, but I knew I was dead. If someone could be by her side, take care of her, I should be happy for her. But I wasn't. I just couldn't be, and I couldn't get any closer. As a waiter, I wasn't even in their league, couldn't hear a single word they were saying. All I could do was stand there, not too close, not too far, watching with burning eyes and clenched fists. My mind started drifting back to when I first met Hailey. Back then I was dirt poor. Hailey came from wealth. When my roommates found out I liked her, they just shook their heads and said, "Bro, if it were any other girl, maybe you'd have a chance. But that's Hailey. Even confessing to her would be an insult." I agreed with them. Hailey was beautiful, well off, flawless in every way. And me, I had nothing but my face. Nothing else about me was worth mentioning. But by some crazy twist of fate, we met at a campus event. I gathered every ounce of courage I had to talk to her. I'll never forget the way her eyes lit up when she looked at me. She didn't act shy at all. Smiling, she praised me. "You're really good looking. What's your name? Which department are you in?" That's how we started dating. But then came graduation. I still had nothing. No great job, just scraping by on $5 grand a month, barely enough to rent a dark, tiny room by the stairs. Hailey's family had everything lined up for her future, but she refused to go home because her family was dead set against us being together. Hailey didn't care. She stuck by me no matter how hard I tried to push her away. That was the start of our little world, huddled together for warmth, surviving on stubbornness and instant noodles. 3 years. 3 years of her refusing a single dime from home, living with me in that stairwell. 3 years later, someone finally recognized my design work. Money started coming in. But just a few months later, I collapsed at my desk and died. Right before I died, the only thought in my mind was, thank God I left Hailey 10 million. At least I didn't die penniless. Back at the party, Hailey seemed to finish her conversation with that guy. She turned to leave, still wearing his jacket. I couldn't stop myself. Like a ghost pulled by some unseen hand, I followed her out of the grand hall and down to the parking garage. "MS, Hailey," I called out to her. She stopped, turned slightly, her brows knitting together. "What is it?" "Cold, detached. Nothing like the Hailey I used to know, the girl who was once my sunshine." My heart was racing. I fumbled over my words. "That man said you accidentally took his jacket. He sent me to get it back." I pointed at the coat on her shoulders, lying through my teeth. At that moment, her driver had already gotten out and opened the car door, standing by with perfect posture. The driver glared at me. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Shit." Exposed in one sentence. I took a closer look at that jacket. Men's style, no doubt, and eerily similar to the kind Hailey used to buy for me. Hailey lifted her hand to stop the driver. I started rubbing my left thumb against my fingers, from the ring finger to the index, over and over. A nervous tick I never never managed to shake. Hailey's gaze dropped to my left hand, then drifted over my waiter's uniform. Then out of nowhere she spoke. "I need a male assistant at home. Interested?" I was so focused on how to get close to her that her sudden offer caught me completely off guard. "What?" Hailey didn't seem pleased by my distracted answer. She frowned slightly. "I need a male assistant. Are you coming or not?" Inside, I almost burst out laughing. Seriously, falling asleep only to have someone bring you a pillow. But I still had to play it cool or risk tipping her off that something was off. How's the pay?" Hailey thought for a second. $2,000 a month. Room and board included. $2,000. It almost made me want to cry. Was inflation in the underworld that bad now? Did they stop burning paper money up there? I barely paused for more than a second before nodding like crazy. "Deal. I can start right now." Hailey stared at me for a while. Did I just look too eager? Was she getting suspicious? I opened my mouth to casually ask when I should start, but before I could speak, she waved for me to get in the car. The car sped toward the outskirts of the city. Eventually, we pulled up to a mansion. I stepped out of the car and just stood there staring, my eyes burning with tears. The driver didn't even bother hiding his disdain. "What's the matter? Never seen a nice house before?" I shot back. "This house has been here forever. Of course I've seen it. I used to walk by and stare at it every time. I even swore one day I'd live here with my wife." The driver laughed so hard he nearly doubled over. "You live here with your wife? You look like you just graduated college. Already married." I was speechless. Yeah, I checked the ID of this body earlier in the car. Fresh college grad. I couldn't be bothered to argue. I turned ready to walk away. But behind me, Hailey was standing there watching me, eyes unreadable sadness radiating off her like waves. I didn't need to guess what she was thinking. I knew. Every time we used to pass this place, I'd say the same thing to her. "Babe, someday we're gonna live here. Look how beautiful it is." And she'd always nod with a smile. I never thought she'd buy it herself one day just to fulfill that silly promise. That deep sadness in her eyes just now. She must have been thinking of me. Inside the house, Hailey asked one of the housekeepers to give me a tour. The woman seemed genuinely happy to see me chattering away as she showed me around. "This is Ma'am's bedroom. You're not allowed in there. This is her study. Also off limits. That room at the very back of the second floor belongs to Sir. No one's allowed in there. Ever. You must remember that. Everywhere else, feel free to roam." I seized my chance to ask, "Sir, when does he usually come home?" The housekeeper chuckled softly. "There's no Sir in this house." What? Hailey hadn't remarried. It was highly likely that there was no trace of a man living here, which meant at the very least Hailey hadn't brought anyone back home. So the man who came over today might just be someone Hailey had a bit of affection for. Thinking of this, my mood lightened a little. I knew that as someone who had already died long ago, I shouldn't be having possessiveness over Hailey, but I just couldn't help it. I said to the housekeeper, "Hailey might need to have the jacket she wore today cleaned. Who knows, maybe one day she'll have to return it." The housekeeper gave me a reproachful look. "Don't talk nonsense. That's Hailey's suit jacket, her husband's favorite style. Why would she return it to anyone?" I froze on the spot. Could it be that Hailey still hadn't moved on from me? A flood of joy mixed with a dense layer of heartache surged through my heart. What made me happy was that I wasn't the only one who still missed the other. Our longing was mutual. What hurt was that after all these years, she still hadn't stepped out of the shadow of my death. Leaving her alone to face all this, I couldn't describe how bitter I felt inside. The next morning when I woke up, I saw Hailey already sitting at the dining table having breakfast. There was toast, fried eggs, fruit, nuts, and a glass of milk in front of her. I glanced over just in time to see Hailey picking up a hazelnut and bringing it to her mouth. She was scrolling through her phone, not realizing what she had grabbed. But she was severely allergic to hazelnuts. Without thinking, I rushed forward to greet her. "Good morning, Miss Hailey. You like eating hazelnuts?" Her hand holding the hazelnut paused slightly, and she smiled awkwardly. "I don't. I was too focused on my phone and didn't notice." As she spoke, she casually put the hazelnut down and hurriedly turned back to her room. I was puzzled, and at that moment the housekeeper brought over my breakfast as well. I ate mechanically each bite, like chewing wax, wondering if my reminder about the hazelnuts had made her unhappy. I thought about it for a long time, but couldn't figure it out, so I gave up on guessing. Hailey was now the wealthiest woman, different from her past self. Perhaps there were some unknown taboos too. I would just need to pay more attention in the future. After breakfast, I followed Hailey to her company. At the entrance, two giant mascot figures stood tall. They were cartoon characters I had once designed, representations of me and Hailey. I couldn't help but stare at them for a long while. When I first started making money, those two characters only existed as flat design drafts. I never expected Hailey to actually have them made, displayed so openly in front of the company building. Was she announcing our love to the whole world? Damn it, I was going to cry again. When I stepped into Hailey's office, my heart felt even heavier. Everywhere in the office, I saw traces of myself. The designs I loved, the jewelry I created before I dyed it, seemed like every single piece had been bought by Hailey and placed here in this room. Looking at each familiar creation, I felt overwhelmed by her dedication, my eyes brimming with tears. Hailey turned and and looked at my emotional face. "What's wrong? Do you really like these pieces?" I nodded. "Yeah, I don't know why, but I feel deeply connected to them." Hailey smiled, a hint of probing hidden behind her expression. "These are all my husband's works. Every piece here was designed by him." One by one I gazed at them until I spotted a piece that definitely wasn't mine. I pointed to that ring. "Is this one your husband's work too?" Hailey looked at the ring for a while before saying, "No, that one's mine. I originally planned to give it to him." Suddenly I had the urge to ask for that ring, but I knew I couldn't. Otherwise I might lose even the chance to stay by her side. I stared at the ring for a long time before reluctantly looking away. Unexpectedly, Hailey suddenly asked, "With so many pieces of jewelry, how did you manage to spot the one that wasn't my husband's work?" I froze. Right? How could I have known? I could only chuckle awkwardly. "Just a coincidence. I thought this ring looked special, but I didn't know it was designed by you." Hailey didn't ask further, only nodded perfunctorily. "Yeah, what a coincidence." Terrified she might discover something, I fled the scene in a panic. But it seemed like Hailey enjoyed bossing me around. Go buy desserts, order lunch, pick up fruits, make coffee. Was she treating me as her assistant now? Oh right, I was supposed to be her assistant anyway. Being ordered around by Hailey felt like absolute bliss. I really wish life could go on like this forever. I was so caught up in my happiness that I completely missed the subtle change in Hailey's expression each time she looked at what I brought back. The last time I delivered the freshly brewed coffee, she took a sip and immediately pointed out the brand. "Why did you choose this brand? The pantry has 4 or 5 types of coffee." That's when I realized I had slipped up. The dessert I bought was a Napoleon pastry, the lunch was chicken and salmon. With the salad, the fruit was red kiwi, and the coffee was her favorite brand with double milk and 1 sugar. I knew her too well, but I also knew I couldn't reveal who I was. I had only come back to see her one last time and fulfill my final wish. I couldn't stay. I quickly covered up. "This one was just right at the edge. I planned to brew each kind once." "What a coincidence that you like this one." Hailey lowered her head, lips pressed tightly together, saying nothing. I rushed to patch things up. "I like my coffee with 2 milks and 1 sugar, so I made yours the same. Not sure if you'd like it." Hailey took another sip of coffee. "I haven't tasted this flavor in a long time. Ever since my husband passed away, I only drink black coffee now." Black coffee, that was my favorite. Hailey was using every little thing to remember me. Hearing this, I quickly found an excuse to leave. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hold back my tears and raise her suspicion. I remembered right after I died, my soul lingered in the mortal world. I watched Hailey Halloween come to my corpse. She refused to let the doctors take me away, refused to let anyone near me, let alone touch me. She held on to me, even though I was stiff, even though my body had started to smell, even though the lividity had set in. No one could take me from her. In the end, it was my mother who spoke to her. "Hailey, Rocky always cared about his appearance. Look at him now, how undignified. Let's send him off clean and proper, okay?" Those words seemed to strike something inside her. She kept repeating my mother's words. Right, Rocky always cared about appearances. I need to help him change clothes, clean him up. That's how I finally got dressed properly and was placed on the hearse to the crematorium. At the crematorium, when she saw my ashes, Hailey fainted. When she woke up, it was already my burial ceremony. Hailey looked like an empty shell, utterly unresponsive to the world. Later, her mother couldn't bear it anymore and gave Hailey a hard slap. "Hailey, if Rocky saw you like this, would he rest in peace? Do you want to keep him from reincarnating?" Those words were harsh, but they seemed to slowly bring Hailey back to life. What happened after that I didn't know. I passed out in despair, and when I woke up, I was already in the underworld. I died suddenly, leaving Hailey not even a single note. My attachment was overwhelming, but the rules of the underworld wouldn't change for me. I queued up with a crowd of wandering souls waiting to drink the cocktail of forgetfulness to cross the river of the underworld. A bowl of Lethi's forgetfulness cocktail was shoved into my hands. I reluctantly drank it down and stupidly blurted, "This is great." I didn't forget Hailey. Lethi, the goddess of oblivion, was so shocked that she dropped her ladle, splashing cocktail everywhere. I couldn't cross the bridge of oblivion because I just couldn't forget Hailey. After handing me the 3,865th bowl of forgetfulness cocktail, Lethi sighed deeply. She finally gave up and said my obsession was too deep beyond her ability to help. So she submitted a request to Satan asking permission to let me return and resolve my last regret. But I only had 3 months, because after 3 months, I would still be nothing more than a dead man. I couldn't tell Hailey who I was. I couldn't let her experience the pain of losing me all over again. I had to find a way to fix this. They say the way to forget an old love is time and a new love. Since time didn't work, I thought maybe a new love would. That night I started looking for all sorts of men to recommend to Hailey. One of the secretaries told me that Hailey had many admirers. I bribed her for a list. At night, I brought the list home and studied it carefully. Mr. Wong, owner of a real estate company, wealthy, but with several mistresses, one one of them a somewhat famous actress. No good. Mr. Zhao a handsome singer with no bad rumors, but there were whispers he was gay. Why pursue Hailey then? Was he asking for death? No good. Mr. Lee a rich heir with decent qualifications, but he was a total mama's boy. Absolutely not. Mr. Zhang a first-generation entrepreneur, rich and good-looking, but a chauvinist. He looked down on housewives and wanted to marry independent women just to force them into housework. Definitely not. Hailey should be free to do whatever she wanted, not trapped in some man's home, unless that's what she truly wanted. I went through over a dozen profiles, and each one had glaring flaws. Not a single one deserved my Hailey. As I worried over this, I suddenly heard someone at the door. I went to take a look. It was that man from the cocktail party. Since I was busy looking for someone suitable for Hailey, I didn't feel as repulsed by him this time. I listened carefully to their conversation. They got along well, shared common topics, and seemed quite familiar with each other. Right? How could I have forgotten about him? Maybe Hailey already had someone in mind. While I was thinking, Hailey suddenly said she had something to do and asked me to go downstairs to keep that man company. I agreed without hesitation. I got straight to the point. Mr. Jack, do you like Boss Hailey? The man across from me froze for a moment as if something had occurred to him, then smiled and nodded. Good. Since he liked her, I acted like a meddling elder, interrogating him about his background over and over until there was nothing left to ask. Only then did I start calculating in my mind. He had known Hailey since they were kids, studied abroad in college, came from a well-off family, and was successful in his career. On top of that, he seemed like a decent person. Most importantly, Hailey didn't seem to reject him. He looked like a good choice for a boyfriend. So I began listing Hailey's preferences and habits for him one by one. Every time I said something, Mr. Jack nodded. Sometimes he even repeated what I said. His attitude was excellent. Clearly he was serious about Hailey. I talked until my throat was dry. The smile on Mr. Jack's face only grew deeper. Finally, he patted my shoulder. There's still a bit of a gap, but I can see how much effort you've put in. Don't worry. What did that mean? Was he telling me to entrust Hailey to him? I wasn't reassured at all, but at least I still had more than 2 months left to observe. After Hailey finished her work, she came out to greet Mr. Jack. He glanced at her, then at me, and left under the excuse that it was getting late. Hailey saw him off at the door. When she came back, I cautiously asked, "Has Boss Hailey always been living alone?" She looked at me, clearly thinking I was overstepping, but I didn't care. If I could persuade her, I would. After all, my time was running out. I heard your husband has been gone for a long time. Why not try starting a new life? Hailey's gaze darkened, laced with anger. I pretended not to notice and eagerly promoted. I think Mr. Jack would be a great choice. You two know each other well, grew up together, and you seem to get along. Hailey frowned and asked me, "How much do you know about Mr. Jack?" I quickly repeated everything I had just interrogated him about. I talked for 15 whole minutes. Hailey pressed her forehead and sighed. "You asked so much, but didn't think to ask if he's single." I froze. She kindly explained, "Mr. Jack is happily married with an 11-year-old son. And I forgot to mention he's my cousin on my uncle's side. Cousins getting married, that's outdated and dangerous." I was speechless. Hailey glanced back at me and suddenly asked, "You really want me to find someone?" I thought about it and said, "Your husband would want someone to take care of you." Hailey tilted her head and smiled. "Then why doesn't he come back and take care of me himself, or you?" Her words sent a chill down my spine. The next day, Hailey went on a business trip. By the time I woke up, she had already been gone for hours. I had nothing to do but wait for her to come back and continue searching for good men to introduce to her. But just as I was busy matchmaking, bad news came. Hailey had gone skiing during her trip and got caught in an avalanche. Her condition was unknown. Rescue efforts were underway. I lost my mind. I immediately booked a ticket and rushed to the city where Hailey was. It was already nighttime by the time I arrived. Rescue teams had been searching all day with no results. I knew how critical every second was after an avalanche. The rescuers understood my desperation and agreed to take me in a helicopter to help search. Even though it was dark, the reflected light on the snow made it possible to see. Gripping the searchlight, I didn't dare blink as I scanned the ground. Hours passed with no sign of her. Hailey's tracking device had lost its signal from the very beginning, making the search even harder. But suddenly I felt something. A strange, inexplicable feeling pulled me in a different direction. I pleaded with the rescue team to go that way. Maybe they wanted to comfort me, so they followed my lead. In the vast whiteness, I suddenly spotted a hand raised above the snow. Someone was buried beneath it, but that single raised hand was a beacon. The rescuers immediately called for backup. I was the first to rush over, and following their guidance, dug out Hailey, who was barely conscious. Through squinting eyes, she looked at me and murmured, "Rocky, what took you so long? I've been waiting for you. For so long." Then she completely lost consciousness. No matter how I shouted her name, she didn't respond. I sobbed as I patted her, begging her not to die, begging her to stay alive. A rescuer, unable to watch any longer, gave me a kick. "She's still breathing. Stop wailing like you're at a funeral." After we reached the hospital, I finally received news that Hailey was sick. safe. The overwhelming exhaustion and tension hit me all at once, and I passed out. When I woke up, Hailey was already awake. She looked at me and smiled gently. "Thank you for saving me." Without thinking, I responded, "Of course I saved you. Why thank me?" Hailey let out a soft the tone rising slightly, showing her confusion. That's when I realized I had said the wrong thing again. "You're my boss. You pay my salary. Of course I have to save you. Where else would I make money?" Hailey sighed softly. "Maybe I've gone crazy. There were so many times I thought you looked just like my late husband. If it weren't for the age difference, I would have believed you were his reincarnation." I froze, not knowing what to say. She continued, "But that's impossible, right? How could you be his reincarnation? People who reincarnate don't remember my preferences and habits." I quickly followed her lead. Right. I heard that forgetting potion makes you lose everything from your past life. How could I possibly be your husband reincarnated? But Hailey's gaze sharpened instantly. "Of course you're not reincarnated. The world is full of strange things. Rocky, you came back. Why won't you acknowledge me?" I was completely stunned. My mouth opened and closed, wanting to deny it, but no sound came out. Hailey stared at me, tears flowing endlessly, as fragile as she looked when I had just died. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stepped forward and hugged her tightly, wishing I could merge her into my body. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, something I had wanted to do from the moment I saw her again. Hailey cried even harder. I cupped her face and kissed her hot tears. Baby, I missed you so much." Hailey clung to me and sobbed uncontrollably until exhaustion took over and she fell asleep. Even in her sleep, she gripped my hand tightly, as if afraid I would disappear again. The next morning, the first thing she asked was, "You're Rocky, aren't you? I'm not dreaming, right?" I teasingly tapped her nose. Hailey laughed like a silly little girl. After she recovered, Hailey didn't ask me any more questions. Instead, she dragged me to temple after temple, praying to every deity she could find. Watching her devout figure, I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth, but I knew I had to. "Hailey, this time, I can't stay with you for long." She didn't break down like I thought she would. Instead, she smiled and said, "I know, Rocky. I know you're doing well over there, and that's enough for me. Being able to have you back for a little while is already a blessing from heaven. Rocky, will you wait for me over there? Wait for me to find you, okay?" I immediately shook my head. "Hailey, I came back this time just to see you one last time before I reincarnate. I can't stay there waiting for you. You must promise me you won't try to follow me early. If you do, I will never forgive you in this life or any other. Do you understand?" Hailey lowered her head, sniffled, and whispered, "All right, I promise." Only then did I feel at ease. For the remaining 2 months, we stayed in that remote area far from the coast. Hailey said, "The faith here is strong. I want to pray to a few more gods. Maybe one of them will be soft-hearted." Of course, I indulged her. But all the gods and Buddhas, with their infinite compassion, must know life is full of suffering. No matter how many temples she prayed at, no matter how many wishes she made, 2 months later, I still began to fade. This time was different from before. We were both prepared. One by one, I gave her instructions. One by one, she promised to carry them out. She smiled through her tears. "Is our love really confined to just this lifetime? Will you wait for me in the next one?" I smiled and nodded, then told her my greatest secret. "Hailey, you know what? Forgetting potions don't work on me. That's how I was able to come back to see you. Next life, I will find you again. Believe me. Hailey, you must live a good life, my Hailey. Healthy, happy, long-lived, safe. My Hailey." I slowly closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was back in the underworld. Lethe stood there holding a newly brewed glass of forgetting cocktail. She rubbed her hands excitedly. "Come on, try this one." I adjusted the recipe again. "You'll definitely forget everything this time." I didn't want to forget Hailey. I didn't want to drink this so-called latest formula. Lethe smirked and pinched my chin, forcing the drink down my throat. I licked my lips, grinned at her, and declared proudly, "My beloved is called Hailey." Lethe stormed off, her face dark. The spirits who cannot let go of their past are not allowed to reincarnate. That rule suited me perfectly. I waited for Hailey in the underworld 3 years after 3 years, again and again. The other shore flowers had bloomed 46 times, and I had drunk more than 9,000 bowls of Lethe's cocktails. Lethe complained that if I didn't reincarnate, soon she would go broke. But I didn't care. Finally, I waited for a woman to arrive. She had taken good care of herself, but there were faint wrinkles on her face, her hair curled in waves, the most beautiful ghost I had ever seen. Standing before me, she said, "Rocky, see, I really lived my whole life, and now I've come for you." The underworld officials told me that the moment Hailey saw them, she asked where I was. I stepped forward, hugged her, and asked, "How did you know I hadn't reincarnated?" Hailey smiled. "Because I know you would never leave without waiting for me. But I didn't want to make you angry, so I waited until I lived out my life before coming to report in." Lethe circled around Hailey twice, clicking her tongue. "So this is the obsession you could never let go of." Then she quickly handed over 2 bowls of forgetfulness cocktail, one for me and one for Hailey. Hand in hand, we crossed the bridge of helplessness together. Extra Hailey. The first time I saw that waiter, I vaguely felt that he was Rocky. The way he minded me, wearing a man's coat, the way he rubbed his fingers fingers with his left hand. It was exactly the same as Rocky. I don't know why, just that one glance I felt it was him. So I asked him if he wanted to be my assistant with a salary of 2,000 yuan a month. He didn't even hesitate before saying yes. My silly Rocky, how could anyone these days be satisfied with 2,000 yuan a month? That's how I brought him home. The way he looked at the house made me even more certain that he was Rocky. Back then, Rocky always said he wanted to earn money so that I could live in this house. After Rocky passed away, I used the money he left behind as my startup capital, building my business like a rolling snowball. There was no other reason. I just didn't want Rocky to worry about me. Having money was the most direct proof that I was living well. When I ran off in a panic, he didn't know how long I hid in the bedroom trying to calm myself down. Early the next morning, I tested him again. I pretended to casually pop a hazelnut into my mouth. Sure enough, Rocky stopped me immediately. He knew I was severely allergic to hazelnuts. Everything he bought, every cup of coffee he made at the company, were all the things I used to love. He didn't know that since his sudden death, I had been living according to his preferences. I was absolutely sure he was my Rocky. My Rocky had come back. The world is vast and miracles happen in it. Could it be that the wish I made last month when I went west to pray to Buddha to see Rocky again actually came true? I wanted to go back to the west once more to beg the gods to let Rocky stay by my side. But for some reason, Rocky started introducing me to other men. Of all people, he chose my cousin. My cousin always thought I should find a companion, and he happened to take a liking to Rocky too. The two of them really made me laugh and cry at the same time. I understood that they were both just worried about me. I had to go west again. Was Rocky in such a hurry to push me to someone else because he was planning to leave again? So I went alone to the west to pray to Buddha. The Lama said people shouldn't be too greedy. I knew my hopes were dashed. Then I heard that if you had an unfulfilled wish, you could go to the sacred snow mountain and pray to the gods. If you were lucky, your wish might be granted. I went to the most famous, most spiritual snow mountain and prayed. But then an avalanche came. As I was buried beneath the snow, I even thought to myself, if I die here, would that be another kind of fulfillment from the gods? Since Rocky is going to leave anyway, we could just go together. But deep inside, I was unwilling. Just like when Rocky suddenly left, if I died like this, I wouldn't get to say a proper goodbye to him either. That kind of pain, I really didn't want Rocky to experience it too. In that hazy moment, I felt like Rocky was coming. Was my Rocky really coming to save me? Impossible, right? But when I woke up, I really did see Rocky. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told him that he looked exactly like my husband. Rocky still tried to deny it. Seeing him stumbling over his excuses, I played my trump card. I cried. Just like before, whenever I cried, Rocky could never handle it. Sure enough, after all these years, it still worked. As soon as I cried, Rocky confessed everything. He really was my Rocky. Just as I suspected, Rocky was planning to leave again. I stopped him from speaking and dragged him with me to pray at every temple I could find. I knew it was probably futile, but what's the harm in trying? Rocky still left in the end. I asked if I could go with him. The panic and guilt in his eyes pierced me deeply, and I decided to follow his wishes and live properly until the end of my natural life. Finally, over 40 years later, my soul left my body, and I saw the legendary officials of the underworld. I couldn't wait to ask them, is Rocky still waiting for me? They nodded and told me that if I didn't come soon, Leafy would have resigned. Rocky's obsession with me was too deep. The forgetfulness cocktail had no effect on him at all. Over the years, Rocky had treated Leafy's cocktails like tea, making it a habit. Satan is stingy, and since Leafy's drinks were ineffective, she had to pay out of her own pocket until the ghost could finally move on. So Leafy had long been eagerly awaiting my arrival. Finally, I saw Rocky again. He still looked young while I had become an old lady, even if I was fashionable and pretty. Standing next to Rocky, we still looked mismatched. Leafy was truly delighted when she saw me quickly serving up 2 bowls of forgetfulness cocktail. Now that I was here, Rocky's obsession finally dissipated and the drink finally worked on him. On the bridge of helplessness, I heard the underworld official ask Leafy, will these two be together again in their next life? Leafy answered, their bond, how could it stop at just one more life? The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.